Ever since electronic media has been the dominant method of communication and information transfer, New York has been the center of the commercial world, the epicenter of business tradings. This rise in the international importance of New York is partially rooted and is an effect of the prominence of New York in international media. New York is home to many of the largest media companies in the world, and it has been the city where media has flourished throughout the decades. It boosted the first broadcast television station in the United States in 1928. Throughout television's history, broadcast and advertising have existed in a mutually beneficial relationship. Throughout New York's prominence in advertising, McCann has been one of the dominant agencies involved with advertisement production. In 1902, Erickson Incorporated was founded by Alfred Erickson, a department store manager in Manhattan, New York. In 1912, McCann and four partners founded McCann Company, whose first customers were several X-Standard oil units, Vaseline, and Beechnut. In 1930, Erickson and McCann merged to form McCann Erickson, a $15 million agency. In 1957, McCann became the first company to have billed $100 million in a year. Today, it has offices in over 130 countries and has created many of the most iconic advertisements of the 20th century, such as Coca-Cola's "I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing."
I'd like to teach the world to sing. Sing with me.
Also, many memorable modern advertisements have been produced by McCann, such as Staples' "That Was Easy" button and slogans MasterCard's "Priceless" campaign. But exactly how do these ideas morph into highly polished campaigns?
Greg and I would be summoned to a room very similar to this, oftentimes it is this room, along with maybe 3 or 4 other teams. And you have an account team there that's going to be giving you an assignment. And so we have got a little deck here for you. And this assignment, this meeting that takes place is called the creative briefing. And that's why this visual actually works really well, because this room will be packed with about 70 people. And we sit with about 3 or 4 other teams, and we get walked through this big, long discussion of exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish. So you get these pieces of paper and you go back to your desk and you procrastinate.
Yeah. So the writer and the art director.
Yeah. Spend a few days doing that, exactly. And then you kind of get to the part where it's like, you get to the point where Greg's talking about you have to have an idea that's not just a TV commercial, but it's also got to be more than, it's got to be a few TV. It's got to be enough to be this. That's what they keep saying. It's got to be a big idea. So, but you go back and forth, and you finally come up with some stuff that you think is and the way we present internally many times is even more, if you can believe it, informal than this meeting. Big enough.
And there might be a couple different teams that are working to try and...
Well, obviously, yeah, the 3 and 4 teams, you're working against probably several other teams. So it's a little bit competitive in this place, too, you know? They're your friends, but within our agency,
right.
We're trying to come up with the idea that's going to get bought. And we'll come up with many. I mean, you'll have many, probably 3 or 4 will make it to this first round, and we like to call that the pulling teeth round. You know, let's say we were lucky enough to go forward to the client. And we call that, obviously, the client presentation. We take it to the client for their feedback. And it's usually brutal. It's usually something that you walk in and the client's sitting there like this, and they're like, I don't know, we'd never do that.
And they just ripped it apart, like, I don't like this, I don't like that, change that. That can feel that way.
Like this.
Yeah. And you might have to you might have to you might put all this work into an idea, and then it gets killed.
Even if it makes that out of the building, which is really hard to do on the creative floor, like even to get it to the meeting is just many hours, weeks of work. But luckily for our Avis project, there was the good news. It was alive. It did live through the meeting, which was awesome.
We hatched an egg.
But there were a few changes. No. So that's where they go, okay, here's our budget. Call us when you know what's going on. So that's where he kind of takes over and figures out how to make that, which we call the producing the ad part.
Or
yeah, giving birth to your idea.
It is giving birth to those boards.
So it's it can sometimes be very difficult because money isn't enough, or we don't have a lot of time to produce it. sometimes the idea is great, sometimes it's okay. It might not appeal to the most creative director, which you want to get somebody who's going to really bring something to the idea going. But that's where we start. I mean, we start with trying to find the right director. Once we find the right director, we go out and we shoot the commercial. But once we shoot the commercial, then we edit the commercial and we work with an editor who then we go through it. It can sometimes be and we pull all those different people, the director, the editor, the music house that creates the music for the 30-second commercial. We pull all these people in that are part of different businesses to make this one commercial. And there are a lot of people involved, a lot of pieces in the company. You want to make sure that all the pieces and the schedules and everything is happening together and on time and without any kind of little hiccup to it, because it means money. And when you're shooting, if your shoot day, if you have one day, that day is probably going to cost, I would say on average, maybe like $300,000. So
just
really,
that day.
Just that day.
Yeah.
You also want to make sure that the idea that the writer and the art director have come up with doesn't get compromised. You don't want to say, oh yeah, we're going to do your idea, and then you show up to the shoot and it's like, oh well, yeah, we didn't have enough money for that, so we're not going to do that. You know,
oh, that's funny. You took us right to the last thing, which is, and your ad gets produced. You guys can't see it, but it's a Depend ad with a woman hitting a pinata. We don't even know what this means. It's just like nothing to do with what you started with. It's like, how did we end up doing this? Who knows? You know, through after the little, ball goes through the whole little peg process, it lands in a hole, and that's what you end up with. And too many.
But there are a lot of things in production. Technology has made things easier, but I think even with things becoming easier in a way, it opens up a lot more possibilities, which is great. You can come up with a lot more ideas. You're not limited by what you can do, but things are much faster too, because it's easier to do it. You can rush the schedule, so it seems easier, but it's actually it's a lot more crammed into one day trying to get things done.
And you can kind of see the way advertising is kind of evolving, because TV, commercials, although you still see a lot of commercials and you see new commercials, people have TiVo, so people can go right through the commercials, and maybe those aren't getting as much attention now, but instead of TV, now we're doing more stuff that's for the web, so that people are clicking on that, or you might see something on YouTube that is kind of brought to you by, it's kind of highlighting the product or whatever. But that's kind of like the next evolution of advertising.
How these media companies respond to the tectonic shifts in the industry will determine how advertising content is delivered to consumers in the future.